We'll wait here just another minute or two as people are joining. Um, as you join, love to have you throw in the chat where you're joining from. Kind of fun to see where the different locations are that everyone's joining from. I'm joining from Utah today, United States. Max, where are you at today?
I am dialing in from Dublin, Ireland. I moved here with my family just 2 weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But I have been to Utah.
That's good. We got a few coming in here. We got Andrea in Columbia, California, Colorado, Utah. Good diverse group here. So we'll wait about one more minute and jump into the content. Yeah, it's great to see travel opening up and being able to go visit employees and teams and customers. And, you know, I know Max, with your team all over the world, it'll be nice for you to be able to travel again.
Yeah. I was telling you I was supposed to be in Costa Rica this week, but they still want my I failed my PCR test last week, and so I couldn't fly through the U.S. Even though Costa Rica has no requirements. As a transit passenger, you still have to comply with the U.S. So, yeah, not all the restrictions are lifted yet. You can travel without mask, but you still need the test to get through the U.S.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, good. We have a nice group on the call today. We'll go ahead and get started. Like to welcome everyone to our webinar series today in partnership with TalkPush about building a seamless hiring experience. Thrilled to discuss the topic today with another experienced leader, the CEO of TalkPush, Max Armbruster. I'd like to quickly introduce myself and Max, and then we'll jump right into the topic. Brigham Tomko, I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Immersion. We deliver fully automated and adaptive language assessments for certifying speaking, writing, and grammar ability in 9 languages globally. And our results are immediate. So we work with a lot of companies in the hiring process to screen the ability of their applicants. Prior to the Immersion, I played a founding role in several companies, including a BPO and contact centers. And a lot of the things we're discussing today are pains and things I experienced in my career in those areas. Want to introduce Max. Max is the founder and CEO of TalkPush, the leading recruitment automation software with a simple mission to make it easier for companies to hire the right talent at a large scale. So obviously, Max is a perfect professional to have here for this topic today. TalkPush was founded in 2014, and they've helped screen millions of job applications each year for some of the largest employers in the world, including Accenture, Walmart, and McDonald's. Prior to TalkPush, Max worked at several enterprise software companies like SAP and others. He's co-founded 3 other companies before TalkPush. It's great to have all of you join us today. For those joining the webinar, if you'd like to ask any questions as we go through, please feel free to do so in the chat. And Max and I will be glancing over at that and try to weave those in as we go. So please feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat. Well, let's jump right in. Why are we having this discussion today? And we've noticed that some of the significant differences throughout the world since the pandemic, and one of the most noticeable is how much recruiting has shifted. What used to happen locally on site is now happening everywhere, remote in all countries of the world. And we've certainly seen it as we've hired for new positions globally. And companies, rather than just looking at local talent, are able to stretch that pool beyond physical limits, hundreds and thousands of miles away even. And it's more important now than ever to be able to find qualified candidates. So Max, how are you seeing some of these changes in the recruiting process, things that were already happening or accelerated by the pandemic, how are you seeing changes in recruiting affect your clients and others we work with in the industry?
Well, my AWS bills have gone up tremendously. We had we had three times the volume in like July of 2020. We had three times the volume of candidate traffic that we had in March, and that was a surprise. So we had to adapt, and it was a stress to our system. But generally speaking, yeah, there were more candidates, there were more job seekers, and employers started to cast a wider net, and they didn't have much resources. They didn't have many recruiters, so I think it absolutely tilted the scale in favor of technology, and it created opportunities for automation platforms like ours and like yours to change the way recruitment was being done. And yeah, it used to be an aberration to have a recruitment process that did not start with a phone interview. Mm-hmm. And increasingly, I think it's becoming the norm. And so that's like the biggest, I'd say that's the biggest shift over the last 2 years. It had kind of started, but now it's in the BPO, in certain sectors, it's the norm, like the BPO sector.
Yeah. How have you seen you mentioned one, phone screens being one of them, but how else have you seen these changes affect where and how humans are engaging in this recruiting process versus the candidates engaging with technology?
The other changes we've seen is, there's the exchange of data and information is everything is front loaded. So it's pre-employment documents, reference check, assessments. Everything is front loaded before you get to the human intervention. So that really changes a few things. And because companies are geared up towards these high volume situations, they've accelerated their shift to recruitment marketing on social media. And social media traffic is not the best compared to qualified active job seeker traffic. The quality is worst, but the quantity is so much bigger that it makes up for it. And so that's the other big shift we saw in the composition of the talent coming in.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think in many ways has been a great asset and innovation for recruiters, is that they're now first engaging with candidates who are already qualified for the job, whether it's through those different screenings or through assessments and other things that allows the humans to focus on pre-qualified candidates and focusing on other skills and fit and culture that are important to those businesses, especially as, go ahead.
No, I was thinking that, that the statement you just made, it may have shifted a little bit in the last 6 to 12 months. I don't know if you noticed on your end that a slight drop in engagement from candidates, where perhaps the fact that companies are moving to a hybrid model again, and so I don't know. Have you seen that on your end, that the engagement becomes a little harder in 2022?
Yeah, definitely, and I think some of that, is a combination of this hybrid model, but also of we've noticed, as you have, that the patience of applicants to do screenings, and there's so many opportunities for jobs. Not only does the recruiting process need us narrow down the candidates, but it also has to be very focused on how do we engage and keep them moving through the process, as they've had many more options for jobs, and also where companies did front load so many assessments, they don't want to invest before they talk to in person. So finding that right balance of candidate drop-off rate versus qualifying the candidates is, we've seen that a lot in as you said, the last 6 or 8 months here.
And there's there's a neat world where you have a sourcing tool and a screening tool and an ATS, and everybody fits in their own buckets. But because the changing dynamics with the pull, the market pulling in one direction, where the candidates are becoming more demanding and having less patience, that can change the demand on the vendors like ours, where a screening vendor now has to figure out how to be more attractive and sell the company. And so we see a little bit of that. And then likewise, you'd have a sourcing company which would try to do a little bit of screening at the front while doing mostly marketing work. So there's a conversion of this. Now everybody's trying to be seamless, basically, and do everything at once.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, the metrics that customers ask us have also shifted. Before, we're an assessment company. It's how accurate is the assessment and can we get the scores to make our decision? But now we're getting questions about what's the drop-off rate of applicants when they hit your assessment versus what we used to be doing in the process. And there's those have shifted as well. We've kind of covered this a little bit, but how have some of these changes, I want to talk a little bit about the contact center and BPO industry, both as an actual outsourced BPO and then internal contact center, where many companies have had the good fortune of for so long to drive the process. It seems more competitive job market that they're having to find new ways to attract and move customers through that process. What are some of the things you've seen or ways that you've seen contact centers improve or differentiate to continue to get the candidate flow that they need?
There's been a lot of experiments run on TikTok over the last year, though I would say that these experiments are still, they're not yielding the same results as you would get on Facebook and Instagram, where you can do much more targeted advertising, and there's more of a culture of sending your information. TikTok is really, really, really heavy on entertainment. So unless you're really good at entertainment, it's going to be hard to do recruitment marketing there. But that's happening, and I think that increasingly companies are okay to work with separated from the concept of the requisition. The traditional application process is one where you go to the requisition, and that's when it begins. The requisition is the starting point. And now it's more like the requisition is the final point, is kept to the end. After we've done the initial attraction, engagement, tell them about why it's cool working here, figure out what kind of position is right for them. And only afterwards, maybe much later down the journey, after the interview, then we decide which requisition you might fit in. And
Yeah, no, that's great. As I start moving towards some of the best practices that we want to talk about here, I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that technology is key to these changing processes, and we talk about digital transformation and globalization of both customers and workforce. But I think it's clear that technology has to be a part of the process, especially now that many of the applicants may never work from an office building. They may never go into one during the recruiting process. So the enablement of remote process, both from tools and a platform to take someone through the recruiting process, but even the human interaction components of the recruiting process are often done remote through an interface like this. And I think it's key, but I think Max, maybe if you can comment on this, it is important for us to use technology, but kind of how do you view the mix of human interaction and technology as we figure out these new processes to optimize the recruiting process?
The human touch is always a differentiator. Well, humans are always trying to outsmart each other, to be creative, to be playful, and they'll have an edge over robots for a long time. So how do we facilitate this human touch at scale is the problem that we're working on. So how does how does a recruiter send a personalized personal note that makes people feel like they're talking to a human, and they are talking to a human, but maybe on the other side it's one recruiter talking to 100 candidates. That's the hard piece to solve. Maybe you remember the movie Her, where the main protagonist falls in love with his operating system, and he realizes at the end of the movie that she has a love relationship with 10,000 humans and the operating system. And so I guess we're trying to get something going like this, where you can have a human operator that handles 100 times the amount of conversation that somebody would be able to 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition into our first best practice that we want to talk about today, and that's communicating with candidates in the places and in the way that they're comfortable and used to help decrease drop-off rate and to increase engagement. What are some of your continued thoughts on that, Max?
Yeah, in a market where people have options, where the candidates have options, then you want to reduce the distance between you and the candidate. And that distance can be physical or it can be technological. To ask a candidate who does not check their emails on a regular basis to go and check their emails every other day or every day is going to create distance. So that's what we spend a lot of time working on, is figuring out what is the preferred communication channel for the candidate, so that we can get back to them before everybody else does. Yeah, eventually they will open their email, but if they're open their email after they've had 3 conversations with your competitors, it won't matter by then. They probably have a job if they're good. And so the first thing we do is, if they're coming from, first we know by geography which communication channel is most likely to be effective. So India does not behave the same as Mexico, does not behave the same as the US. And then we know based on the channel from which they come from, and then we ask them as well, which is the best way to get a hold of you, and that changes. And for our North American viewers, the majority here, I think, it's email and SMS, right? Those are the 2 platforms. But as soon as you step outside the US, you've got to factor in WhatsApp and potentially some of the other messaging apps as well. And that gets a little bit more complicated, because then you have to have a different provider, usually.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's, we see examples of that type of interaction. My son went to get his first credit card, he applied for it, and nothing happened for a couple of weeks. And they're like, well, we called him 3 or 4 times. And I was like, well, teenagers never answer their phone. Did you text him or send a message in some other way that they were going to engage? And it's kind of a funny example, but it's real. If we're trying to make people interact in a way they're not comfortable or used to, then it makes it very difficult.
And then the reverse is true. Sometimes I've had customers tell me, no, we want the phone call, because the phone call is the way it's done here. Like in India, for example, they love phone calls because they're free. In some segments, like truck drivers, I think they like phone calls because they're driving, so they can't
Yeah.
text and drive at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's a great point. And the point is that there isn't a single solution. Each customer, each industry, each country may have norms that need to be adapted to help engage the target audience that they have and pull them through that process. This next best practice we recommend is workflow delivery platform that you can have different components, say assessments or Zoom calls for interviews, and ways to interact with people remotely to go through the recruiting process. But we think it's very important to have a way to manage that entire process so we don't have customer fallout. Obviously in this space, Max, you are delivering this, but you're also integrating with other systems in this process. So tell me a little bit about kind of how you've seen the workflow delivery platform for recruiting change, and what types of systems are you often connecting into?
We, every large enterprise customer is with one of the large enterprise HRIS or ATSs. They're not typically designed for high volume, so they're not going to support things like mass communication, mass outreach, and if they do have texting capabilities, it's going to be more of a notification system, like, hello, log in here to go check out your application or something like that. It won't be an actual conversation where you're collecting data and you have a bi-directional exchange. So, we work with companies that are willing to spend a little bit extra to build that, and we are built to have every exchange happen like in a conversation, which is very different than an ATS, which is built to go step by step, stage by stage. So instead of doing a workflow like step 1, step 2, step 3, for us it's more of we still have steps, but it's mostly a conversation, and you have your whole conversation history in the middle of the panel when you look at the candidate history. So I don't want to bore the audience with how an integration happens with an ATS, but if we want to keep it very simple, we would focus on using chat and conversation to engage at scale with talent pools, and then we would move the information to the ATS to be the system of record, and we could configure what kind of information at which stage gets sent over.
Yeah, I think that's great and key to the process, because the goal with all of this is to deliver the quantity of quality of candidates that the customers need, and then get the data in front of the decision makers so they can make those decisions quickly. And we're even seeing more and more that the recruiting data and information about those applicants gets rolled into that ATS and is part of the quality scores, and as they're evaluating CSAT and performance in the future, looking at correlations to how they did in some of those recruiting steps so they can adjust those processes. So, having a seamless workflow is important, but also then having the data available for operational improvement and recruiting improvement is key.
Yeah, that's the most valuable data for anybody doing recruitment is who gets hired. And unfortunately, it's not always the case where that data is shared between the vendors, and that could really affect your ability to deliver a continuously optimized service. If you don't know who gets hired, then you're operating in the dark. So a key part to a good integration is feeding the information back.
Yeah, definitely. The next best practice we want to talk about is automated assessments in that process. And we've touched on this a little bit as we've gone through our discussion so far, that having the ability to screen candidates based on a variety of different types of skills during that remote process, and potentially even prior to having interaction with recruiters is key. There's skill-based tests, language-based tests, general competency and cognitive assessments that can be delivered through this process. And I think it's very important that you only test what you really need to test, because we've already talked about fatigue. Assessments that are delivered, as we've seen best practice, need to be as short and concise as possible, where we're continuing to see applicants' willingness to invest time in an application process dwindling. The results of those assessments, in as much as they can, should be automated to help only progress people through a process who have meet thresholds that have been set by their customers. And I think the goal of all of these changes that we're seeing in the process are to deliver more qualified candidates to our recruiters to eventually be able to make offers to. And those humans we've talked about being involved in the process, need to have confidence in that data and be able to know what the data means, so that they can recommend a hire or make an offer based on those assessments. Otherwise, those things are just a waste of time in that process.
Yeah.
Anything? Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
Max.
I'm thinking about the world is so different now, where recruitment really used to be about let's cast as many fishing lines as possible. So we'll optimize for this channel, for that channel, and then we'll hire a bunch of recruiters, and we'll see what works, and we'll just take whatever candidates we can get out of it. It was just let's just work on all fronts, and so that we can meet our quotas. And I feel like in certain segments, certain industry today, where you do high volume, especially if you're okay with doing some remote hiring, then that method you can stop doing that entirely, and you could truly optimize for that one channel and that one assessment and that perfect journey that works just for you. And then you could just tweak it, make it just right, and you can meet your quotas, because everything is scalable. You can 10x your volumes, and then get everybody going through the same assessment, and get it just marginally better month after month. So it's much more like laser engineering, laser engineering, rather than fishing at random and trying to meet your quota by just the power of your energy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and that statement kind of leads into our last best practice. I think we're about at time. So when we talk about a seamless hiring or recruiting process, it sounds great, but I think it's very important that we don't just have a seamless process to be seamless. If the process isn't engaging candidates and delivering quality candidates, then an automated or seamless process doesn't have any value to the business. So as we look at those, there's a lot of other factors that need to be viewed in that process. Is it fair and unbiased? Is it decreasing hiring time and cost? Is it increasing retention? Are we getting better performance scores out of those candidates that we have? And so I think, again, it's that last best practice is don't be seamless just for seamless sake. We need to be improving the key metrics that matter for us in our businesses. Max, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share at the end here, either on that specific question or in general to our audience?
No, I agree that results is what should be driving recruitment, because sometimes you can build something that looks really cool, that gets your VP of HR excited and your CEO excited, but if it doesn't improve your conversion rates and your cost per hire and your quality of hire, then unfortunately you're leading the organization astray and moving resources in the wrong direction. So yeah, stay focused for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I think we could keep talking for hours on this topic, but we're going to wrap up. I'm excited that for everyone who came. As Alec mentioned in the notes, we will provide the recording to the participants after so they can hear this. We're also providing everyone who joined here with our free copy of the Ultimate Guide to Bilingual Hiring in 2022 to help give insights into creating and maintaining this seamless hiring experience. We're also willing to give everyone who is here a free automated speaking test from Immersion. So please feel free to reach out with any questions, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Great to have you today.